All right. So, hey, good people. Welcome to the Evolving Education Project podcast hosted by me, Dr. Tiffany Amniachai, and friends, where we center the educational joys, passions, interests, and inquiries of people of color. Um, but for this episode, this is an impromptu episode, y'all, because we needed to address and have a conversation about this current moment where we're seeing a resurgence of anti-Asian violence at the hands of white male terrorists. I'm just going to call them that because that's what they are to me. Um and and these terrifying incidents that I've been seeing that we all have been witnessing in the world have just been heavy on my spirit and my heart. And so I wanted to have a conversation, or a space of conversation, a dialogic response among my sisters, my Asian and Asian American sisters, with whom I have a lot of respect for, who are wonderful women that are leaders, strong, that speak truth to power, that are scholar activists in their own right, that I have real relationship with. And I just wanted to um hear what they have to say about this, and I want to hear from Asian and Asian American women, and a dialogic response from Asian and Asian American women. And I could say all of this stuff about solidarity, but I want my Asian and Asian American people and sisters to tell me if they feel like I'm in solidarity, because I'm still learning what solidarity is. And even though here with the Evolving Education Project, we are about communities of color, and sometimes we talk about that broadly and sometimes we focus on one. And there was a person that Patricia Hill Collins cited in her Black feminist book, and she talks about how, especially with communities of color, we don't need to decenter anyone. We just need to pivot the center. And so right now I'm going to pivot the center to my Asian and Asian American sisters. And we're just going to start off with, if everyone can introduce themselves, and I asked them ahead of time to share their ethnicities, because I want us to disrupt how we even understand those identities of Asian and Asian American is very broad, and that's inclusive. That's a broad term of inclusive of a lot of different folks and a lot of different people and histories and backgrounds. And so we're gonna do that. And so I want to introduce you to my amazing. Well, some of y'all already know them because they're amazing. They already doing dope stuff in the world. But to my amazing sisters, as we unpack this conversation. So whoever would like to go first.
I'll go first again. Why not? Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Grace Player. I am an assistant professor at University of Connecticut, but my kind of lineage is I'm the daughter of a Japanese Brazilian woman. She is the daughter of Japanese immigrants to Brazil, and a white father, or I am the daughter of a white father as well. So Japanese, Brazilian, white mix is what I am. But yeah, just really happy here with my sisters, with Tiffany, who has been my sister for so many years, and I'm just grateful for this space.
I can go next if that's okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Josephine Pham, and I'm an assistant professor in education at Cal State Fullerton. I identify as a proud daughter of Vietnamese refugees and born and raised in the Bay Area, proudly so, and specifically in East San Jose. It's great to be here.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Tairan Qiu. It's pronounced Qiu Tairan in Chinese. I'm a doc student at the University of Georgia. And I was born and raised in the southwestern lands of mainland China. And I am the Han and Dai ethnicity, if you want to get really down to detail. Yeah, and I'm a proud transnational woman in the sense that I was born and raised in China, but I also lived for several years in Vancouver when I was in elementary school, and then I now reside in Georgia, the United States.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Wei-Ling Sun. I am assistant professor at University of Texas at El Paso, and I am a Taiwanese, first generation immigrant. I was raised and born in Taiwan and moved to U.S. to complete my master's and PhD program in Austin, Texas, and then just started from there, and then just not recently, couple years ago, I got my green card. So very new immigrant here. My parents, my dad, he's currently living in Taiwan, and my mom, she is living in Austin, Texas, and so my family members are. Because of the immigration status, so my family members are all over the place, and we're trying to wait for everybody to get the status so we can stay together eventually in the future. So that's what's happening right now.
Okay, so thank you all for introducing yourselves, sharing your histories, your backgrounds, your identities, your proud neighborhoods that you grew up in. And yeah, we have to get to this that's happening in the world. And it's because we know that this is very intentional. This is very intentional. This is very targeted. This is not new, what we're seeing happening to Asian Americans. This is my sister Josephine here helped me I was like, I don't like, I was like, I don't like how everybody's saying the rise of. This is not new. And Josephine was like, that's why I say resurgence. And so that's what I'm saying from now on, because it is a resurgence, right? It's not new. So how are you all feeling or processing this moment?
Well, just that question is very simple, but it's like a very loaded question to me, because I think to me, I have so many emotions going on. I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm frustrated, and I'm also very worried because I have a daughter who's very young, even though she's mixed race. But I have conversations with my parents, and even my mom was joking about maybe when I go to Atlanta, I should perm my hair so I can look like Mexican. And at that moment, it's funny, but at the same time, it just really feel like we just can't look like ourselves, and because we don't feel safe. And I even feel that maybe I'm hoping my daughter won't look too Asian, so she will not be into so much trouble. So it's just it's a lot of a lot of emotions, and I'm just gonna leave it there, and I can add a little bit more stuff later.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there's so many emotions and so many layered emotions, and thinking about my mom, who is a single woman who is turning 80 next month, who lives by herself in Tampa, Florida, which doesn't feel in any way safe to me. Like, she doesn't have a community. She doesn't have folks around who look like her, who share her identities, who, she like going and visiting her. I'm like, dang, like this is a white area. And so I think about her and like worry about her, and she doesn't, she's kind of like that stoic woman, and she doesn't often talk about her own fears. And so like, I feel like I don't want to like put my fears on her. But yeah, I don't know. And maybe she is feeling them, but she doesn't orate that. And so like, that's like a constant kind of like concern. And I think for a lot of us, just thinking about our parents as well, I don't have kids, but, thinking about our youth, the youth that I work with, and the impact that this is having on them, not just physically, but psychologically, like the mental health and the anxiety that they were already feeling for the past 4 years through the Trump presidency, about their own immigration status, about the immigration status of their parents, about their safety in general. And now it just feels like just such a weight that we're all feeling. And I don't know, I just like always have them kind of in my mind and thinking about, where they're at, and been trying to reach out to some of them and talk, but it's a lot.
Yeah, like I heard Grace saying, being worried about her mom. Like I am super fortunate, like I miss my parents all the time. I've been in the United States for 10 years, just by myself. I'm the only person in my family that's here. And, I've always wanted my parents to come here and live with me and, and just to be with me. But I feel extremely relieved and happy that they weren't here for the past 4 years, and they're not here, now, because I would be so lost. Like I would not know how to protect my parents, and I would just be more angry and anxious than I am right now if my parents were here. But like we have a lot of Asian elders in my community, and I tell them don't go outside. Look at the kids that I work with. Like it's definitely an anxious time for everyone to some degree.
I think for me, I feel very stuck in my body. Like I don't think I've exhaled, and that's kind of like I feel like I'm just holding this heaviness. And there's a range of things that came to my mind. I think on the one hand, I just felt so angry and drained from all the gaslighting. Like we know, we didn't know anti-Asian hate crimes was a thing. We didn't know y'all experienced racism. And it's like, no, you knew, you just weren't listening, So to see it being taken like an explicit stance and forefront in this moment, knowing that there has been anti-Asian sentiments and specifically anti-Chinese in the broader public news media, it's draining. And then how that plays out in the educational context, where we talk about the need for anti-racist intersectional work, and a lot of the times the AAPI community is often left out of that. And so even just to see the ongoing ways in which the white social imaginary continues to take precedence, it's draining. And so it's hard to feel stuck in your body and re-engage in that conversation again, on top of all the other ways that we experience this in our bodies and with our family. And I think for me, my family's a 6-hour drive. And so, I just was with my parents for the first time during this pandemic, and we just took a walk. And I think we've been talking a lot about meanings of race and racism in the US context for sure within the last 4 years. And I think there was a lot of things that kind of hit home in this current moment to see that mirrored in our community in particular. And so we don't talk a lot about our feelings. We're very practical when it comes to showing love in other ways. And so, I think like sharing that even with my dad on the walk, he was like, "Do you hear about these things happening in the Bay? Like, I'd kick their ass if they come at me," like joking about it. And then pausing and whispering to me, like, "No, but it is scary, And I think even just having that moment of resignation that meanings of race and racism are connected to how we view our own experiences, and we have to think about liberation with other communities of color. And so to be able to talk about what that means in the contemporary times with the Black Lives Matter movement, and then now thinking about what that means in this particular moment, I don't think I've ever had that space to really process that with loved ones before. And so it's almost like simultaneously a door being opened in those ways that's forcing me to think about our own intergenerational trauma, and then simultaneously feeling gaslit constantly in our everyday work.
Yeah, I think like even thinking about my own work in the educational context and thinking about, I just got an article accepted on Monday, which felt good, but about Asian girls and Asian girlhood literacies. And that piece and like the feedback that I got, which was a lot of it was helpful, but a lot of it was just like so rooted in these like things that people don't talk about, like what Josephine is saying about like these hidden or not so hidden, but very felt in our bodies, very felt in our minds and hearts, and like between sisters, but between that piece and then I was thinking about the first piece that I solo authored and turned in, and I talked about the resistant practices of Asian girls, like their literate resistance, and a piece of this was a piece like 3 years ago. But the piece of feedback that I got, one of the pieces of feedback that I got was, well, but Asians are known to be very obedient to their elders. So we don't understand why you are using this framework of resistance in their literacies. And when you talk about gaslighting and you talk about that, there's so many layers going on there. There's the submissive Asian stereotype, especially the girls, right? Like we are seen as submissive, as passive, as going along with the flow. So that's one level of it. The other level is that, well, they don't need to resist anything. Like this was the narrative that was being creative in this feedback, is that they don't need to be resistant because stuff is gravy, and these are the girls I was writing with for whatever, are Vietnamese, Filipina, Cambodian girls who have very specific racialized experiences that are so erased by the way we talk about Asian Americanness. And that's not to say that East Asians don't also get shit, but like that is such a hidden experience that was so hidden and so gaslit, like I just felt so gaslit and felt so frozen in the work that I was afraid for a while to write about those girls again, because I didn't want to deal with that again. And you look at just like, this article that I just turned in, or how little there was to cite about Asian American girlhood. And I think about how many of us have been gaslit out of getting our stuff published. How many of us have been told that this is not legitimate. And so we decide, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Because I felt that for a time. So it's all, I don't know, it's all very like visceral, and I think that's when Josephine talked about like feeling in your body. I think like our bodies are so racialized and our bodies are sensing this in such a deep way right now. And like that sense of not being able to breathe and like kind of being on the edge of tears is like, what I've been feeling all week.
Yeah, I think, this is, this event is not really, I think it's not just only re-traumatizing the community again, but it also, it's generational, because it really reminds me of what happened in Vincent Chin. And after that, that was like this very significant event that united the quote unquote Asian community. They speak up, and they use their political voice to speak up and bring the attention of how Chinese Americans and the East Asian Americans in general has been stereotypes and oppressed in the society. But also at the same time, after that, there was not, even though they are organizations speaking up, but we're not receiving any attention at all, because this stereotype of us being just being obedient, and we're invisible. We're visible in the way of that we're a model minority, but we're invisible in any other ways, that whatever that we speak up, we're just invisible. And this event has really just happened. It doesn't really. It's not just showing the racism, but it's also the intersection of racism and sexism, because it's really, you know, talking about the Asian female body. And when the news first come up, there's conversation already talking about, are they prostitute? The questioning of those victims, are they prostitute? And it shouldn't even be, they're not prostitute, but it shouldn't even matter at all. They're just human. They're victims. They are being killed, and they should be respected. And it's even just the question of, are they prostitute, really just represent that prostitutes are less valuable of their life are less valuable. And to me, it just really just, I just don't know. I mean, we know, but it's like, come on, we can be better in this. And like Black Lives Matter has been talking about how the racism has happened in the system, and it's still, again, it's traumatizing the community. And throughout the entire, it's not just the Trump presidency. It's like, since the beginning, we've already having this racial hierarchy that Asians are, model minority is at the top, but everything else doesn't matter. But those hierarchy, it on the surface, it looks like the Asian and white, whatever, and Black is at the bottom. But the reality is that all these hierarchies really just making sure that white is on the top and everybody else is at the bottom. So I just think this is really upsetting, that I feel that everybody has been, the community of color has been doing so much work, but it's still, where is the solution? And the solution is really, we need to address this white terrorism and all this, the illness that's happening. And I had a conversation with my mentor, who's Latina, and she also mentioned about it. There was a bad spirit, if it comes from the indigenous perspective, there was really a bad spirit in our land that we need to not just address, but we really need to get rid of. And so I just feel that there's so many things that need to be discussed. And even just after the news that they're investigating who's the victims, and the picture came out, and they're just old ladies. They're not anywhere close to being a prostitute. And just, it really is an evidence of showing that people who are initially thinking, even they don't even know the victim, and their first thought is, are they prostitute? That is really signifying the sickness of the system, that it really just, the stereotype is so attached and rooted in the system to our Asian bodies, and it really doesn't matter who we are. We just immediately being connected to that, even though even in this little group, we're human beings. We are having so many things to offer, but right there, it just see our face, then that's it. We're done. They don't even care about what we were talking about. That everything else don't matter anymore. And I think in terms of an education, it just really need to. We really need to. I still don't know what we need to do, because I feel like we already try everything that we can to speak up and to put to really educating the people around us. And I'm still fighting every day in my own life, in the system. And I also feel very overwhelmed, because I wanted to write op-ed, but I don't have energy to do it because I'm fighting in my own family. I had a conversation with my dad. He's thinking that this event is not race, it's not race related, and that was a take. It took a toll on me. I had conversation with my mom, and she didn't know too much about racism, and so we just have to have conversation. It's just ongoing conversation. I had conversation with my husband. He, in the past couple, even before the event happened, he was making the conclusion that because we argue so much, so he thinks that I just need to be submissive, and I was so triggered by that. And after that event happened, he realized how triggering it is to just mention the word being submissive, and he didn't even mean what he didn't even understand the context. But after that event, he understood, and he now told me that he will not use that word anymore. Now he knows the consequences and what that means in the Asian community. And so I feel that this racism is so penetrating in every single aspect of our lives. And what are we going to do to fight the system when we are still fighting in our everyday life?
Yeah, and Wei-Ling, while you were talking about, how the white supremacist system shaped people's responses to this event, thinking that they were prostitutes. Like, I was also thinking about the system that shaped the murderer, like his thinking, right? Like, how is he associating massage parlors with his, what was it, fetish, like bad thoughts? That's what he said. Like, why is he associating Asian massage parlors with his fetish? And then that fetish in itself is really problematic already. But then, like, he acted up on it, and he thinks that because he has these bad thoughts that so he wanted to eliminate them, and he thought about, and to eliminate his bad thoughts, he had to eliminate Asian women. Like, that in itself is so problematic and scary. And like we are gendered and racialized, even if we want to or not. Like, we walk on the streets and people gender and racialize us, and it's deeply angry and scary. Like, yeah, and it just made me think about this experience I had. Like, I was with my husband at one of his MBA gatherings with his classmates, and he's a white man, and a white woman came up to us, like, knowing that we're married. Like, she asked him, "Where do you work?" And then after he told them where he worked, she turned straight to me and said, "Oh, so do you work?" And I'm like, "What do you mean if I work?" And and so, like, the system not only shape how white men think, but it shape how white people think and how non-Asian people think, right? Like, if we look like this and we're with a man, then we're probably submissive, and we're just at home taking care of the family, or whatever she's thinking, like, however she's stereotyping me and assuming things that are happening, assuming how I live my life. So it's just there, and all of these events, big or small, are just reiteration that we're gendered and racialized. No matter what we do, like, we just show up like this, and we're gendered and racialized.
Yeah, I think, like, that phrase, I have it, like, written down, and I've just been kind of, like, thinking about it. A temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate. I think you were referencing. I did, like, some writing about that this week, and just really thinking about how familiar that phrase was to me in my own personal life, just through the ways that white men specifically have sexualized me, talked to me, treated me since I was a very young girl, and I think this is something that we share as women of color, Tiffany, I know, like, as a Black woman, you've probably experienced, like, some other iterations of the sexualization of your body, female body of color, right? I think this is something that we share. in different ways, of course, because we are different. But there are connections, and there's links to this white supremacist, sexist stuff. And just like specifically thinking about like the white male desire to dominate, which plays out in militarism, in imperialism, in all of these ways that white America has taken and tried to dominate, not just us in the present day in our bodies, but in the histories of American imperialism, in the histories of war and rape and the disgusting things that Americans have done on the continent of Asia. And so many of us are here in this country now, a country where we are vilified, where yellow peril is still a thing, you know, because of those actions, because of the histories and legacies of whiteness and white Americanness has done. And this is not new. And so that phrase, a temptation, that he wanted to eliminate in both the global sense, the big sense, the just, this is how American masculinity treats women of color, and in this case, Asian women of color. And in the particularities of our experiences, because all my Asian homegirls, we've been experiencing the kind of like language that is aimed to break. Like I remember the first time being told by a white boy that he could break me. Specifically around my Asian, you know, I won't get into the language because I know, you know, Tiffany's a good girl, so she doesn't want to hear this language. But
Please feel free to use any language you want. You will not be bound. Go ahead.
I won't get into it because it could be triggering. But the ideas about breaking bodies, racialized bodies breaking one another, is something that is so familiar and felt, you know, like has been lived my entire life. And so now I think like hearing not just about the actions, because the actions are horrific, but then this cop. And this is why we can't, you know, when we have Asians trying to move to like over police our communities, it's not the way, because you heard how that cop talked about these actions. The police are not the way. And this, like, I think goes back to this idea of solidarity and like, you know, we need to be looking back to our histories, not only of this breakage, but of the ways that we have in fact been in solidarity with the Black community, with the Latinx community, with various communities through, you know, the Third World Liberation Front, Yuri Kochiyama, Grace Lee Boggs, all these folks who have been doing this work. The Yellow Peril movement, you know, like all of this stuff exists, but we don't talk about it because it falls outside of the realm of that model minority stereotype of submission, of apoliticalness. And like you know, like one of my goals is to learn my history better because I was never taught it. So I have to learn it myself, learn the histories of our folks in this country and globally, because those are the models that we need to build upon to fight anti-Blackness in our own communities, as well as to fight anti-Asianness as a whole. Because like we're not going anywhere as long as we still buy into these white supremacist lies, which have been so core to upholding the stereotype, not only from the outside, but often from within our communities.
Yeah, this solidarity really speaks to me. And, you know, because my parents, like they've been immigrants and we talk a lot about this. So like, so I just thought it was, you know, normal to talk about solidarity and, you know, being friends with people, other people of color. But it wasn't until I, you know, started working with the Chinese communities that I realized like anti-Blackness is deeply rooted in, you know, the Chinese communities here in the U.S., but also in China as well. Like it's a global phenomenon. Like white supremacy is also global, well analyzed globally. And yeah, so like that solidarity is so important, and also, you know, problematizing the way how a lot of our community members think about Black people and Latinx people, and really like it needs to be challenged. And whiteness and proximity to whiteness and that proxy privilege is not the way to go. Like, because you're, like what Wei-Ling said, you're always going to be on the bottom, and white people are always going to do whatever they can to maintain that power that they have on the top.
So what do we tell, how about I'll just say what I'm thinking, and then, because I don't want to now say Asian and Asian American women, what should we do next? So I'll just say, like, and then you all, if you feel, just jump in. But I think a lot about this, because I actually, some of you noticed, like, right before this happened, like the day before this happened, I had posted something about, um, I posted something about people saying things like coming, like saying like black people need to do more, black people need to do this, and with the resurgence of anti-Asian violence. And I was trying to pull people back to, which I appreciate is being said here, is that that's not the answer for us to. We do need to deal with that, and we do need to, because we don't know our histories. That's what I think it is. I think because we don't know our histories, we don't know our own histories, and then we don't know the histories of other communities of color, is why some of us come incorrect. We do. You know, even within my community, sometimes we come incorrect, or because we see, because we do experience anti-blackness, right? And so we don't know how to differentiate between, yes, I may experience sometimes in certain parts anti-blackness from a particular group, but still at the end of the day, this is all a white supremacist project. That was my main argument. Like, at the end of the day, we cannot be sitting up here. We, just like I said, we got to know how to pivot the center, and when the moment needs to be about another group, just about that group, you know, and we need to be here, show up for this group, and just, that's all it's about right now, right? This is all it's about. Um, but we also have to bring it back to that this is all a white supremacist project. And so we cannot get into this, um, well, you should have did this and you should have did this and you should not, among communities of color. I'm not fighting with y'all over that. Okay. Yes. But I do think, like, in this moment, it's okay, um, and we should pivot the center right now. Like, the center needs to be, with our Asian and Asian American. It doesn't mean that we're not still fighting for our own things. And I think that's what I'm trying to learn. I sound a little all over the place because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't have these conversations regularly. I don't sit with my family and talk about, Mom, how can we be in solidarity with our Asian brothers and sisters? We don't, my mother did call me though, which I appreciate that she's trying. Like, she did call me when I posted something about Asian and Asian American. I love how we're bringing up our families, and how this is hard talking about this with families, like, and she was like, well, what is this? Why did you, now what happened exactly with the Asian women? And okay, so what should we be doing? Like, I do think we're in a moment where people, not everybody, but some people, and I'm only going to talk about communities of color because I can't, I don't want to center white people in this. You know what I mean? Even though we have to deal with it. They're like, this is why we're having this conversation, because of white supremacy. But I think, like, I want us to learn as communities of color of how to work alongside, how to be quiet, how to pivot the center, how to do all of that. And that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm here as a learner. I don't know what I'm doing. I never had these types of conversations, and I don't have these conversations a lot within my own community. Like, I think and I think that's because, you know, we have them a little bit, but not a lot, because I think sometimes you could just so consumed with your own stuff that it's hard. And sometimes when you feel like nobody already doesn't care about you, it's like, well, what I got to think about them for? But that's not the way, and that's not the work. And I'm just telling you, like, that is not the work. And it's sad that we always have to pick up this labor as people of color. Like, again, like, as you all were talking, I'm just going to be totally transparent. I'm just like, wow. So he goes and does this, and then I invite my beautiful Asian and Asian American sisters to process what white supremacy has done. You know what I mean? And I just want to disrupt all of that. And I'm just like, I guess I struggle. Like, what is the way, like, we have to care for ourselves. We have to love for ourselves, and we have to get through this. But it just seems like we're always the ones left with the burden. Like right now, I'm like, you know, it's like the burden is to you for something that you didn't do. Right? We just want to live and live our lives. And so I guess I struggle with that. So I don't know. I'll stop, see what other people want to say. If you do want to say something.
That's how white supremacy operates, though, right? Like the ownership of bodies, the ownership of labor, and the ownership of time. Like that's how it operates, and it takes a toll on all of us.
Yeah. I think like this week I tried a lot to kind of reject that as much as I could. Like I barely worked this week. I'll be very honest. I was a bad academic, you know, because like I was like, I can't fucking work. Like I can't. And I spent time eating Asian food, like across the Asian food from across the Asian continent, with my homegirl, you know, like my Asian homegirl, who's like the only person I see right now. But, you know, it's probably been one of the most important, Dr. Trisha Kim, shout out to Dr. Kim. But, you know, she's like the only person I see right now. And I'm so grateful because I don't think I could have gotten through not just this week, but this whole year without that Asian sisterhood. And so, you know, this week was like a time where we're like, no, we're saying like, hold up on all this labor because that's what they want to keep on taking from us. And let's create spaces of joy and eat good food and laugh and dance and like sing and like, you know, make that at the same time as having our moments of processing and crying to, you know, and grieving. And someone said earlier, like this, like re-traumatization, you know, like we have our moments where we slip into that and then we say, okay, let's go for our walk. Let's go breathe. Let's go drink some wine and eat some good food. Cause like, that's what I need. And, you know, last night we went to this restaurant and it was Asian chefs, Asian servers. And it's, you know, a little COVID friendly space. There was only 2 tables, and all Asian customers. And I was like, dang, like, fuck whiteness, you know, like this is what I need right now. And I think beyond that, also just being with not just my Asian girls, but like my Black girls, my Latinx girls, you know, like all my girls, you know, who have helped me so much. And, you know, Tiffany, you said you still are learning and you don't know I don't know what I'm doing, you know, like, but I look to the ways that sisterhood operates and the way that friendship operates, not in like a cheesy kind of like, oh, if we're just friends, you know, like I don't believe that, but I do believe that there is something magical in the way that we can come together and use our joy to say, fuck white supremacy. Fuck you for trying to take my labor over and over and over and over again, and my joy and my survivance and my body, and like say, like, we're not going to do that. And when we center that joy and when we make room for ourselves to heal, then hopefully that's where we can do that learning of our histories, that coalitional learning where we can start developing better theories and better ways of talking about this stuff. Because we can't talk about Asian racialization in the same way that we talk about Black racialization because it's different. It's rooted in white supremacy, but there's different things. And I don't think we are good enough yet. I'm not good enough. I won't say we, because I don't know. I'm sure there are people who are better, but I am not personally good enough. And it's something that I'm trying to learn so much more about because I don't feel like I was ever even given the opportunity to really learn about, you know, Asianness and Asian racialization. And like I gave like on Tuesday in class, I was like, you know what, we're not doing the lesson plan. We're going to talk about Asian racialization. And I talked for 45 minutes just about like where I'm at with it. And that was important too, even though it was a class of, you know, pre-service teachers and like, you know, some of the women of color were like in all of our classes, well, through our program, they're in their last semester of their teacher certification program. We have not had more than like a second to talk about Asian folks. They're like, we had no idea about these histories. And so what are we doing in teacher ed too, to make sure that like we are focusing, when we say we're anti-racist, we are anti-racist in a holistic sense, and that we get better at figuring out what our histories, what our theories, what all these dynamics are, and also like build off of the work of us, you know, of the folks who are doing and living it, and stop looking to white people. I mean, I don't think anyone in this room probably is looking that much to white people, but you know, like, I think we owe it to ourselves to say, like, we have knowledges that we just need to dig into and do a better job of coalitionally and collaboratively coming up with these theories. Because Tiffany, I'm still learning. I don't know anything. I'm trying, but you know, I'm grateful that, you know, we can come together and try.
Yeah, and you know, like I need to be fully transparent here. You know, growing up, like, because we were working class immigrants in Canada, and you know, and the Chinese society is pretty white centric too, in the sense that, you know, if we had white foreigners in China, they're very privileged and they're treated like, you know, esteemed guests. Although I think any foreigner in China would be treated as an esteemed guest. But you know, if you spoke good English, dominant white English, as Dr. April Baker Bell says, you know, if you spoke dominant white English, then you automatically have more power in Chinese society. You know, and you know, like I was trained during my undergrad and master's, and now even PhD at predominantly white institutions. So those white theory and white perspectives was what I aspired for, and because nobody taught me better, you know, I thought that's just the norm, like that's what everyone has to do. And it wasn't until I came to UGA, like my second year of PhD study, I took a class with Dr. Sakina Everett, and it was Justice as Praxis, and it literally changed my life. And she, like in class, she didn't say the words "fuck white supremacy." That's what she taught us the whole semester, and it was seriously life changing. And you know, she said you'd have to change your onto epistemology, whatever that means. Nobody really knows what that means, but you just have to change your perspective, like your whole perspective on research, and not only decenter whiteness, but center your own thing, like create your own center. And you know, after her class, like I'm like, whoa, this is life changing. But you know, learning and unlearning really takes a super long time. So like it wasn't until this year, you know, with all the trauma I experienced personally and also just through COVID, like I started paying more attention to how my community, like my sisterhood, my Asian sisterhood, but also how my communities growing up. I grew up in a super big family, and like how those communities nurtured me and how we lived theory of love and resilience, and also that transnational theory, and you know, like, and it's really more life changing, you know, just forgetting all of the stuff that I'm reading in articles and that I've learned, and just recentering how I was brought up. That was so revitalizing, and is so revitalizing and empowering. And you know, it's cool because it's prompted me to talk to my grandparents more, my like my friends more, and just to think about like the histories that we lived, and also my family history, like that intergenerational history that I never thought was important. Like it really prompted me to just dig more into that, not only, you know, our collective history, but my family history. And it's pretty magical. Yeah. And I thank Dr. Sakina Everett for changing my life. I tell her all the time, and it's getting to the point where I'm getting creepy. She's like, stop saying that. but it's really her.
I just want to say, honestly, it is like from all of like in my educational history, it's always been people of color who have like allowed me to learn in the ways that I need to learn. And so just putting that out there, like that's where we learn and that's where we find joy in our learning. And that matters.
Yeah. And for me, it's really Black women specifically. My advisor, Trisha Lewis Elson, she's also a Black woman. And like, yeah, like these two Black women really changed my life and just showed me how academia and life could look like. And I feel incredibly in my career and already experienced that love and grace and empowerment.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree that most of the time it's just women of color are the one really lifting us up and in the critical moment. And so I think, to answer what Tiffany said about what's the next step, that I do see that when I reach out to my friends and I told them that this is frustrating, it's so, fucked up, and I'm so angry and I feel hopeless, and what they respond to me is that, one of my colleagues he told me that, I'm sorry, Wei-Ling, this is happening, and we're having a conversation in our class next week. So just having that conversation in your class as much as you can, and bring that to students' attention, that really helps. And I feel like at the same time, it's kind of like in a relationship, right? When you're in a relationship and you can't really change the other person, but you can change yourself. But to me, in my mind, I was like, oh, fuck, why do we need to change ourselves all the time? Like, what about the other person? It's like in this system, it has always been people of color trying to do something. And there's nothing wrong in the white system. But that is exactly what needs to be addressed. And so I think, the issue of, instead of having people doing critical race theory, we need to have more people doing whiteness studies. And it's currently one of my article. I was struggling with my theoretical framework, and I found this work by Dr. Joe Fagan, and he wrote this white racial frame, and he was talking about, in our literature, we've been always looking at, when we're talking about slavery, we just always talk about the slaves, but there was no conversation about the slave owners. They're part of the problem. They're actually the core, they're the problem. Where are they in the beginning, owning slaves and creating that system? And so I think it also goes back to the history that we need to just having more white folks really talking about their own whiteness, what happened with their own, they need to talk about this more. It's not just about us. We're doing our work through and through every day. They need to really do something. And so I think part of my anger is that we've been doing this so much, but it's not gonna work if the other part of it, the other part of the problem, never wanted to address it. And so I think the next step, I feel like we're so overwhelmed. We're always expected to do so many things that we're always the one that needs to fix the problem. But the person, those who really need to step up and fix the problem, they need to step up, because we can only do this much. And so, in a sense that it's a little bit hopeless, but it's still, I remain hopeful, because we do see change coming. There are people in the coalition that is really across the different race that is happening, and people are doing a good work. it's unfortunate that it really needs to, it really, it needs to take people's life to make some people to realize, oh shit, this system is so corrupt, it's not working, and we need to do something. But it's still, it's a beginning that we just need to, I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but I just feel like it's so hopeless, but at the same time, change is coming. And we need to just continue doing it and not losing our hope. That's the most important part, just not losing our hope, because if we stop doing it, then nothing's gonna change. If we continue doing it, at least something is gonna change. It's not gonna change the way that we want to, but it's still moving towards somewhere.
There are a couple of things that came to my mind in terms of quote unquote next steps. I think the first for me is starting with the self. And for me, I realized a lot of ways in which I've been complicit in making myself small. And maybe not just complicit, but trying to unlearn that. And I realized so much of that has to do with consent. In ways that I feel like I've been put on public display without my consent. And so being forced to speak in ways that are against my ways of being or cultural ways of knowing. And like, I know, Tiffany, when we talked about this, you're like, I'm surprised you said yes to this. And, talking about being more comfortable being in the background. And, it helped me realize, like, I think that's my, like, coping mechanism for the ways in which trauma plays out in me choosing to stay small. And so I think I've been thinking a lot about, if we're serious about amplifying that, like, how do we begin with that healing process too? So I really had to unpack and think about what that meant for me, and what that means as a public scholar too, which I think I'm still working through. The other thing I was thinking about, I really value thinking about in my work, the everyday ways we engage in the liberation work and how it's a persistent, ongoing, sustained practice. And so for me, I had to sit and think about, how have I been uplifted and loved on by everyday Asian American women in ways that I think I have not made visible enough. And so I just sat and listed and tried to think about and name what that meant for me. And so two women in particular came to mind. When I first moved to Los Angeles and, how to start over in terms of community, there was one Vietnamese woman who owned a sofa store. And she was like, oh, my daughter, why are you alone buying a couch? Like, what's going on? And she was like, put down a $20, cash payment deposit. I got you. And you can pay the rest on your own. And she would give me fruits. And, I told my mom, and she was like, thank goodness you have someone taking care of you. The other person I thought about, my ate, I called her. She worked at LAX, a Filipina woman. And she would always be like, why are you traveling back to like another conference or back home alone? And she would cut me in line. And just the ways that I felt loved by, women whose names I didn't even know, who didn't know me and took me in as their own. And I know other mothering is a practice that happens in Black communities. And so I just thought a lot about, like, it was really those moments that really kept me whole. And I don't think I appreciated that enough. And so just being able to take seriously, how are the ways that we are nourished in our everyday context by Asian American women? And then the last thing that came to mind is, I think we've been talking about this being a white supremacist project, and also recognizing that it's a colonial and patriarchal project as well. And so I've been thinking a lot about the specificities of what this means for Asian and Asian American women, and thinking about, we live in a really loud, westernized society that talks a lot and doesn't really say much. And so I think a lot about, like, how do we understand the purposeful silence of Asian American women, and also the silencing.
Mm.
And so I'm thinking about and encouraging us to think about, which Asian American women are we listening to, and why? Is it because it's more palatable? Who are our thought leaders? And I think about, other moments of crisis and racial unrest that we've experienced within the last couple of years. And there were certain thought leaders that emerged that made hella money off their work. And a lot of it is because it was rooted in something that was more palatable, comforting, and still rooted in the white social imaginary. And so when I think about thought leaders for what this could look like moving forward, what I think for me, I can only offer so much as a cisgender Southeast Asian American Vietnamese woman. And what would it mean for us to think about thought leaders in this moment? And what would sex workers say about this, who have brilliance and knowledge and wisdom to help us understand the resurgence of this particular moment, to help us move beyond, disrupt that white social imaginary. And so the last thing I will say is that I think this reiterates the need for ethnic studies even more so, not just learning our own histories, but really reclaiming what that means from a lens of race and power, and the ways communities of color have always shown up and shown out for ourselves and one another. And to really think about how do we carry that ongoing movement in ways that it was initially imagined, and not, co-opted for the lens of diversity, equity, and social justice as it looks like in this moment.
And just to add on to that too, I'm not trying to convince white people of anything, because we've seen that they will not be convinced. I'm not trying to talk to white people about this stuff because they're not going to listen to us. I am deeply invested in learning about these histories, our shared histories, our separate histories, and putting my focus there on saying, let's continue to work together amongst our, across difference, through difference, with folks of color, because that's where the magic happens. And white folks, they're not going to be convinced. I'm not. So it's draining and hurtful to me to try to work with them or try to teach them anything. So I'm here for my people. I'm here for, Rainbow Coalition, whatever that looks like. But I'm here for my people, broadly conceived, and challenging the ways that white supremacy have fractured us, and instead saying, no, let's learn our histories, our magic. Show me what you do. I'll show you what I do. And we're going to do shit together. And we're going to make our spaces powerful and beautiful and healing, and not worry about what white folks are doing as much as we can. And that's not to say that we're ignoring white supremacy, but I'm just not interested in talking to white people about dismantling white supremacy, because they have a history of not wanting to do that.
Yeah, and I agree, even though I'm like, this is so frustrating. They're the problem. They need to do something. But meanwhile, I'm like, I don't really want to talk to them.
Don't do it.
They're so toxic. Yeah, they're so toxic. And we know very well it's just never worked. And so I think this is, it's very important, like what Grace and Josephine and Taiwan was talking about. It's just we need to first of all do self-care, because this is very important process. That if just like when we go to the air in the airplane, they were talking about you need to put a mask on yourself first, and then you can help others, right? So we need to do the self-care first to make sure that we're okay, so we can continue doing the fight. And at the same time, our community, we just need to take care of each other. Like this event, definitely, this talk and the coalition definitely will create a platform for the communities to heal, and also we can, when we see community of colors or individuals who are left alone, then we take care of each other, because nobody else is gonna do that, and only us, we can take the action of doing it. And also at the same time, I when I was observing and watching all the news and people who got invited to talk on the shows or talking about what's going on in the event, I was like, where are the East Asian Americans? Like, where are these people? Because most of the time they're just really the people who are not really from that area of the ethnic group, or talking about this issue. But we also need to do a little more. We need to take the action of like speaking up, even though, like, to me, my dream is just to retire and be happy for the rest of my life. But I feel like there was really, because we're receiving all this education, and really comes with these knowledge, really comes with responsibility, that we have to step up a little bit, even though sometimes I feel very overwhelmed. But I just think we just have to do it as much as we could. And just like in my class, that when I teach students to look at data, I will definitely mention about, okay, so Asian Americans are in this group, and they're like high performing kids, but it tied to the model minority stereotype, and we have to bring that subject in the classroom. And just taking that action is empowering for me to feel like, okay, I'm actually doing something, and I can change something. So just like what Grace said, it's like we definitely have no intention of going out to reach out to white folks and telling them that they need to do the work. But what really, really helps and keep us sane is to work within the community, because that is really where the magic happens. And what we can do is just doing it as much as we could, and meanwhile making sure that we're doing the self-care, because this type of work is really energy draining and spiritually killing. And so those are the work that we just need to continue doing, and don't forget to do the self-care.
Yeah, and just thinking about one other way forward. Yeah, just we really need to have hope in our young people, in our community, and also across communities, like the youth, the children. Like, I follow a lot of young Asian people on Instagram, and they're really dope and on fire. So really amplify their voices, center their voices, think about how we can help them and amplify their voices, mold those little critical heads and minds and hearts and souls. And because they are our future, we'll be ancestors one day. It's funny, I called Tiffany an ancestor, and she said she's too young for that. Yeah, but we'll be elders, and we'll be older siblings one day. So it's really important for us to invest in those young people, and be hopeful that our young people, generation by generation, will be better and better.
Well said. Well said. What a way. Well, listen, I'm going to say one little thing, and I'm going to let y'all go, because I'm so thankful that you all came at the last minute, and just this impromptu. You're all very, very busy, and you're dealing with this yourself. But I just want to remind us of a couple of things that you all said in these final, in the ending of your first of all, we all need to remember how and think about how Asian and Asian American women have nourished us. And when you said that, Josephine, that resonated with me, because in my Black neighborhood, and not to make it a stereotype, but it's true. When I went to the nail shop, Asian women and men nourished me. They knew me. They knew I was a teacher. They knew when I was in high school. They would ask me, like, doing my nails, like, how is it going? How is school? And I'd be like, it's going good in my Black neighborhood. and and we were on a first name basis. And I think, like, even if we think about ways that maybe it's not it is huge we think is not huge, you know, and I looked forward to that. I remember one when I was a classroom teacher, one nail shop that I used to go to a lot, they would treat me with so much respect they were Vietnamese because I was a teacher. Like, oh, you're a teacher? Oh no, you sit back. No, 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 no. And I'm gonna do this. I was like, oh, okay. Just because I was a teacher. But for them to know that, especially Hannah, and I saw her daughter grow up and, you know, because I was going there for years. And I think we need to think about, you know, when you're seeing these conversations, think about the Asian and Asian American people that are in your life, people of color, because they are in our lives. And they do spend time with us. They do love on us. They do help us to care for ourselves. They do take care of us. And to I mean, I think Hannah knew my mother, my sister, and me. And I would come in, where's your sister? How's your mom doing? Because she knew all of us, right? Because we all would go to her. And I think that's a way to look at, like, how would we stand with each other if we really thought about that more. Also, I appreciated about what Grace was saying about, like, we got to stop only talking to white people. This is, you know, like, and yes, they need to do their work, but I'm very intentional at the Evolving Education Project to say that we center the needs of communities of color, because I get that that work needs to be done, but I don't think we always have to do that work. It does need to be done. And that's not my work, really. Um, and that's okay. I think that there should be places where we can just have conversations about us and how we feel and how we're processing what's happening. And I think there should be spaces where we can just focus on Black people this week. We could just focus on Asian and Asian Americans right now. We can just focus on Latinx people, and we can talk. And then later on, we could talk across. And I think that's okay. And then Tairan with the youth. The youth, yes. I mean, that's it. The youth will save us, and we just have to keep thinking about that, and learning from them and letting them lead us. And yes, I am an ancestor. I get it, Tyran. I'm okay with it. I am an ancestor. Well, I'm gonna live my life like an ancestor, you know, eventually, like you told me. But I just thank y'all so much for being here, and care for yourself. Do something good for yourself. I wish we was at a conference, because then we could just be like all together, acting crazy, looking cute, and just doing our thing, right? And Wei-Ling, please give your baby a big hug for us, right, everybody? A big hug and kiss for us. Thank you for being here, being a mama. And everybody, you can just listen to us, follow us on social media, the Evolving Education Project. This is not going to be a highly polished one, but we just had to have this conversation. We had to come at the kitchen table and have a conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Loving you all.
Yeah, I have to let y'all go. So if I invite y'all again, y'all come back. So y'all go ahead and get off, so you will say, she didn't keep us too long.
Yeah, it's really nice meeting you, Wei-Ling and Josephine, and just seeing you, Tiffany and Grace, and learning from all of you. And thank you for the space, Tiffany.
Yeah, you created a healing space for all of us.
Well, I love y'all. Y'all heal me. Y'all are just women that I look up to, that I get joy from, that I love that we can talk across and through difference, that really get. I think that what I love about the four of you, and Steph, even though she couldn't come, is that it's very rare to find people that can can sit with another's oppression and still sit with their own oppression. And I was very intentional about who I invited, because I see that in all of you. And I think that's the way forward. And if I could say another thing, y'all are the thought leaders. And I wanted to hear from y'all, because I want to hear Asian and Asian American women responding to this. You know what I mean? Y'all are the thought leaders, okay? On this conversation.
Okay, if you say so.
You are.
If you say so. But appreciate this, because I think, yeah, I don't know. It's just like, these opportunities to learn with each other. That's what it's all about, you know, and what just like that thing, sitting with each other's oppression and like being able to say like, you tell me your story, I'll tell you mine. And like, we'll grow through that. You know, it's such a, I don't know, it's what we need. It's what we do already. I mean, like not all of us, but you know, it's like, I feel like, you know, me and you, Tiffany, I just like think about us sitting in, you know, some like corner in some hotel lobby at some conference,
At a conference,
sharing our stories, you know, and like going through it and like figuring out where we go with each other. And like, this is what I'm dealing with. How about you? Like figuring all that out. And, you know, like that stuff matters so deeply.
Love you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Rest, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. To find out more about the Evolving Education Project, to write in, or to join our listserv, check us out at evolvingeducationproject.com. And please download this podcast, subscribe, and follow us on social media. We hope to cultivate an authentic audience and community. We want you to help us to evolve over time and shape what this could be. Now that you know what we're about, let us know what you want to learn more about, authors that you would like us to interview, discussions you would like to have. Okay, that's all for now, good people. We out.